Oregon is a leader in the rebirth of craft brewing. With more breweries and brew pubs per capita than any other place in the United States, it's no wonder that Oregon has become a major destination for beer lovers worldwide. Oregon was one of the first states to permit brewers to sell directly to the public. In 1985, a change in Oregon law made it possible for brew pubs to offer handcrafted ales to customers who enjoyed not only drinking the beer, but seeing where it was made. There is a difference today in Oregon between just drinking beer at a tavern and enjoying a craft brew and fresh meal at a brew pub. Join us for a tour of Oregon brew pubs and taste the difference.
The brewers that are here took a chance and said, let's do something that really appeals to our heart. And so they put that out, and the customers were ready for a little fuller body beers. So I think those two matched together helped. And the state of Oregon changed their liquor laws. So microbreweries could exist and brew pubs could exist, and that happened in 1985. And from there it just exploded from one or two to today there's 35 craft breweries in Oregon. The kind of product that they make certainly is a reflection of who they are and how they view both beer and business. But there's every permutation. Some brewers are very much into small scale batches, doing very specialty craft beers, and that's their sort of presentation. They approach it like that. But you still need to have broad distribution to be able to move the product to just keep body and soul together. So they have to be business people at the same time. If you'd never had a microbrew beer, you would just be drinking pale blonde beer for the rest of your life. And you might not know any different. What the microbreweries and craft brewers offer is just the variety of beer and the variety of styles and the deep, flavorful beers. You can have a wheat beer, a pale ale, an amber, a stout, or a porter, or a barley wine, or a fruit beer, and have all these different types of beers, and I think that just appeals. People have more refined palates today, and I think the variety of beer appeals to them. The brew pubs are certainly meeting places, and I mean, they're central points in the town, and because of the renewed interest in craft brewing, that the more towns that create those small breweries, those become central places for young people to gather and share good beer.
Portland has more brew pubs per capita than anywhere else in the nation. You can start downtown with Rock Bottom and work your way through the Mike and Brian McMinimans family of brew pubs, some with movie theaters, and the renowned Terminator Stout. McMinimans has over 10 brew pubs in the Portland area alone. One of the reasons Portland has become known as the Munich of the Willamette, that's the river that flows through the city, and is the site of the annual Portland Brewers Festival.
I'm from Iowa, and if you're familiar with Meredith Willson's Music Man, that starts out with a song where there's this by God Iowa attitude, right? And I think our Iowans have been a little tougher to convince that all great beer doesn't come from Milwaukee or St. Louis. In the Northwest, there's just this fervor for microbrewed beers. It's encouraging to me for my future to walk into a tap room here in Portland and find 19 local beers on tap and one for Budweiser.
There's a lot of demand for quality products, and a lot of the pioneers began in the Northwest, of course, building up that demand. And well, we're just lucky to have a good solid base of customers who appreciate quality beers.
Well, actually, we came out all the way from New Jersey to come here. We flew in last night at 11 o'clock and spent some time around the town just walking around, and it was just, I don't know why I'm in New Jersey, outside of a real job. And we missed the festival last year by 3 weeks. So I was determined to actually come to it this year. So we planned vacation around the beer festival.
And whenever we're in foreign countries, the first thing we do is try their beer. China has marvelous beer, bottles this tall, And so this was a good introduction to Portland for us.
Start out with beer. We were just walking around town and seeing the sights and so forth and so on. And we got a cab to come down here, and we got the beer, and she says, now the fun begins.
It's good. It's good. I think all the people are getting tired of the regular beers that you get, and they're looking for a little more body and a little more flavor, and they're turning back to the microbreweries to bring that loss of flavor back.
In northwest Portland, you'll find the Portland Brewing Company, probably best known for McTarnahan's and Honey Ale, but also home of the Tap Room, where you can select from a creative menu and craft brewed beers.
I think a pub, I mean the name originally, that's shortened from public house, and it's a place where people come to meet and socialize, and I think that's what's so important about a place like this. The beer in a brewery always comes first, but it's very important to have good food to eat with good beer, and that is our aim here, to have food that matches the quality of our beer and is complemented by the beer. I think it's a marvelous beverage. It contains enough water so that you don't get too dehydrated drinking it, and it's very refreshing. Most beers are very refreshing. Some beers are more complex and interesting and fall into a different category. There's I think a larger variety of flavors available in beer than in most other beverages. Beer goes great with food, and I love food. A beer is a very social beverage too. It's a wonderful thing to sit and have a beer with a friend. And I like to think that these places are great places for people to come and meet other people and have a dialogue. I think there's far too little of that in our society today. I think we're so over-entertained. We're constantly bombarded with outside entertainment, and we'd all be much better off if we sat and communicated with each other more often. So that's what I like to think these places accomplish, these little places that we have. I think this may be a lofty ideal, but I think we're in some ways providing a service to the community aside from our beverages and food in providing a place where people communicate. We don't call this a pub, we call it the Tap Room, because we have a pub over at 14th and Flanders where our original little 10-barrel brewery is. When we began to develop this space, we were referring to it as a pub for a while, and it got very confused. This room has a completely different atmosphere, a different spirit. It's a little slanted towards southern Germany, again with some Portland modifications. People are into flavor in this part of the country, I think. Plus, they tend to, in Portland especially, get behind a local product and support it.
Dick and Nancy Ponzi were pioneers in Oregon's wine industry, as well as opening the first brew pub in the state. We asked them, why Oregon?
I think of it as a renaissance. It's kind of the re-emergence of small breweries is what this microbrewery business is. Before Prohibition, every town, wherever there was any kind of European immigrant who settled there, was always looking for his beer, particularly German heritage. They would bring their raw materials if they had to and make their own beer at home. But usually what happened is that breweries would form, and they would establish themselves in these little communities, and that was the regional beer at the time.
We became interested in beers along in the 80s. Well, you know, we're always interested in beers, but real beers, with travels to Europe in conjunction with our wine business. And we, of course, observed that people were drinking beers in Europe that were much more interesting than what we had here.
The one thing that we were looking for was a location, and we thought that this certainly looked like a brewery building. You know, it was of period of the early 1900s, brick building, old style, sitting here kind of sleeping, and it was a sleeping building. There was nothing in it. Initially, there wasn't any legal way of doing a pub. If you were manufacturing, you couldn't do a pub until the legislation was changed, and then we did the pub. So initially, we were thinking of processing a plant, a brewery building, and then we realized the attractiveness of the building. I mean, the heavy timbers, the turn of the century kind of construction materials, the brick and the heavy timbers. And we primarily just cleaned it up. We just took it back to its original, exposed the brick and exposed the wood, and put some tables and chairs in here. If you sit around here about 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock at night and you see people leaving their jobs and coming here, it's interesting to see who's standing at the bar. I mean, you see a cross-section of America. You'll see stockbrokers coming in here, you'll see electricians, you'll see just people, carpenters, tradespeople, and they're drinking beer and talking together here. The commonality is the beer.
You could say if you'd never heard a Beethoven symphony in your life, what would you miss? Well, you might not miss anything because you wouldn't know you were missing anything. On the other hand, you're missing one of the sublime things that a human can experience. I don't know if I'd quite put a microbrew into that category, but certainly anything that enhances your sense of living, of enjoyment, of attachment to the world around you, I would put in a very positive light. And you're just missing out on one of the great pleasures of life.
On the other side of the river, in North Portland, you'll find traditional German-style brewing at Widmer Brewing Company. Kurt Widmer tells us how his unfiltered wheat beer, Hefeweizen, became a popular favorite.
I was brewing more and more at home, and in fact, my brother had kind of taken up this hobby simultaneously, even though we were 1,000 miles apart, and we compared notes, and then I gradually became aware, this was over a period of 5 years of home brewing, that I was getting better and better, and it was almost the classic, again, cliche that gee, you cook really well, why don't you open a restaurant? Friends would jokingly, because it was strictly a joke, I mean, nobody ever heard of opening a brewery at that point, but they would say, gosh, you know, your beer's gotten so good, why don't you open a brewery, you know? And when we started, one of the ATF officers that worked with us, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms officers that worked with us at the start, conceded that they had experience in closing breweries, but no experience in opening them. And so this was a real learning experience for these guys. I think also one thing that was important for the startup breweries 11 years ago was that the Northwest, and particularly Oregon, had a strong tradition in the consumption of imported beers and draft beers. And we had an early and constant, to this day, enthusiastic supporter in Carl at the Dublin Pub, and he basically said, gosh, your beers are selling great, can you brew another style, you know, and I'll put it on. And at that point, we had 2 tanks. Bringing out another style was not really an option, and so we thought, well, we can do this unfiltered, you know, the Weizen unfiltered. So all we did was just take a few kegs off the bottom of the tank before filtration and gave it to him. It turned out that people were very attracted to the appearance. Strictly on his own, the way he promoted it was to use a Weizen beer glass. He'd fill up a tray of them and just have his waitress walk around his pub with this tray of Weizen beer glasses. And I mean, it was like wildfire. I mean, people would see this. It was the first time that they were seeing it, and they couldn't resist trying it. Unfortunately, when they tried it, it turned out that they liked it. So I have to give him credit for spurring us on. I mean, we may or may not have come to that style at some point, but the fact that he wanted it so early on, we started without any intentions of it becoming a mainstay, but within about a year's time, it way overtook the Weizen beer, and in fact, today it's way over 80% of our total production. People here whether they are natives or immigrants, kind of quest after a higher quality of life, and that quest manifests itself in the outdoors and in natural clothing, in quality coffee and wines, and then also in beer. I mean, this is just one more of those manifestations, the quality beer.
Traveling up the Willamette River from Portland, we come to the Willamette Valley, home of 12 different varieties of hops, as well as some of the best fruits, vegetables, and vintners grapes in the country. This valley is where the pioneers on the Oregon Trail were headed, and it's still one of the most abundant agricultural areas in the world. Golden Valley Brew Pub is just 30 minutes from Portland in McMinnville.
The purpose of Golden Valley, and the reason we call it Golden Valley, is because of the Willamette Valley, and what comes out of this valley is so abundant and rich, and we want to reflect that in our food, in our beers, in the wines that we produce. We source everything that we can from fresh local growers, and we spend a lot of time with the quality of the food to match it up with the high quality of the beers. Our beers are on the bolder side, even for the microbrewery beers, and that's the direction we're going in. We firmly believe in very distinct flavors. Our Red Thistle Ale is our Scottish ale, and we've come out on the wholesale market with that, and we're very proud of that beer. John designed that beer last winter, and we came out with it, and people started crying when we were going to take it off, so we left it on. The taverns in America sort of lost their image, and people stopped going to them because there was no place for the family to go. We make our own root beer, and one of the reasons we do that is so that the kids feel included, that we're making something for them just as we're making beer for the adults, you know. Even the college kids, they come over all the time because they're excited about these beers because they have such great flavor. And before it was just, what's the cheapest beer and how much of it can we get and afford, you know. It's great to see that. I mean, that's really important. It means that we're having an effect in a positive way to these kids, that it's not just how much beer you can drink, it's what you're drinking and why. People are going to come around to it. I don't think it's going to stop. I think we've hit on something that people have forgotten about, the simple things in life, the very simple pleasures of having a good beer and sitting down in some place that's comfortable, relaxing, enjoying a good meal, something that's fresh. I think people are going to wake up to it because it's a local thing. It's a simple thing, and it's something that anybody can enjoy. You don't have to be a wine snob, or you don't have to be a great connoisseur to like a beer. I mean, it's the simplest thing in the world.
Eugene is in the middle of everywhere. 2 hours from Portland, an hour from the coast or mountains, and halfway between San Francisco and Seattle. Eugene is also home to Steelhead Brewery and Cafe, as well as Terry Farendorf, one of the few female brewmasters in the country.
There's a lot of good beer in this town, besides the fact that it's a beautiful small or medium-sized town of about 120,000 people. And it's right in the heart of the Willamette Valley here, close to recreation, an hour from skiing, an hour from the ocean, 2 hours from Portland, 3 hours from Ashland Shakespeare Festival. We're right in the middle of everything. And it's on I-5, so we're right on the road. If you're coming from California and you're going up to the Oregon Brewers Festival, you can stop at Eugene on the way. Well, one of the things that makes Steelhead special is that we are one of the first pubs in the area that brought together a brew pub, a true brew pub that sold only its own beers on tap, and a really nice dining establishment that has a really comfortable kind of upscale decor. We call the menu an eclectic brew pub type menu. A lot of the dishes are cooked with the beer that we make here. We have a beer battered fish and chips that's made with beers depending on what what the chefs feel like using that day. They like the dark beer a lot. We make our own homemade bread, which uses spent grain from the brewing process. We make pizzas after 5 o'clock on weeknights and on weekends, and the pizza crust also has spent grain from the brewing process. The crowd here for lunch during the week is definitely a lot of business folks, and they like to come here. The food is great, and if they aren't drinking beer, we make our own homemade root beer, so there's something homemade and delicious to have here. The weekends and the evenings, it can be a college crowd. Maybe they're a little later on, around 10 o'clock, but from around 4:30 on, we're packed. We always have 5 beers on tap, at least 5. Sometimes we have 6 or 7. We always have the Hefeweizen, which is a German name for an American style of wheat beer. Hefe means yeast and Weizen means wheat. So it's a wheat beer with the yeast in it. That's why it's cloudy, and it's supposed to be cloudy by design. It's popularly served with a lemon in the Pacific Northwest here. So we serve it with a lemon because most people prefer it that way. You could call it our training wheels beer because someone who's used to a national brand beer can certainly come in here and sit down and have this beer and enjoy it because it's not too assertively flavored. If they haven't discovered microbrew beers, they haven't discovered that beer comes in more flavors than yellow. The brewing industry is definitely predominantly a male industry. There's more times than I can tell you that I'm the only woman sitting at a table, for sure. But I feel like I'm treated as an equal and a peer. They respect me because they respect my work. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. If I didn't make good beers, I probably wouldn't have their respect, but beer-wise, I think I am an equal. And people are coming to me saying, oh, I want to get into brewing field. I want to be a brewer. How do I do it? The first question I ask them is, have you homebrewed? And they say, no, I never have. Or yeah, a couple times with my cousin Louie or something. I'm like, well, you really need to do it yourself, and you really need to do it a lot. Now, if you don't like homebrewing because you got to clean up and you got to scrub a pot, you're not going to like professional brewing because it's 95% cleaning. Of course, you get to rub rubber boots, which is, for me, a lot of fun. To get that assertive, robust, gourmet flavor, you have to go to a brew pub. And also, if you really want fresh beer, and you can get hooked on the flavor of fresh beer, you got to go to a brew pub because nobody has fresh beer like beer brewed here.
As we move down the valley, we enter southern Oregon, and the mix of natural beauty combined with a laid-back atmosphere. Many of the cities are a reminder of Oregon's past as a prospector's gold mine. In Roseburg, just an hour south of Eugene, discover the Umpqua Brewing Company and the good old days when the public house united the community.
Roseburg had 2 breweries at the turn of the century. I have photos of the hop fields in the 1800s here. And Roseburg Brewing and Ice Company, they were bottling beer at the turn of the century here in 50-barrel batches. I mean, that's huge compared to our 5.5-barrel batch. The word Umpqua is an Indian word which means abundant, overflowing, plentiful. That's what the Indians called this region. The pub it's just bustling with energy and life. It's always different and changing, and people just come. It's a real social place. I guess it's successful in the way that it brings a lot of people and unites the community and has an activity spot for a lot of culture and new things in the area, which we didn't have in Roseburg much.
You walk in the door and you smile on your face and you're accepted, you know, whether you have a tie or, you know, an old, you know, woodworking jacket, you know, you're in here and you can mix it up with, you know, everybody.
We have every walk of life comes in, from the retired person to the young college graduate to the struggling mill worker. I mean, you know, and they all come here and they all take down those titles and they just all become friends. It's tough at first, but I think we're pretty well received. People like the oddity of beer being brewed right here, and I think we've converted a lot of Bud Light drinkers.
I drink a gold in here. I don't like anybody to know that Michael has gold, mainly because I don't want it to go dry, and I drink it because I want to grow hair.
We do dinner specials on Fridays. We have a unique thing going on the first Friday of each month. We have sushi night. We have a Japanese chef comes in and prepares sushi. We've been doing it for about 2.5 years. It's been sold out every time. Probably 30% of our business is traveling through, or new to the area, or just passing I-5. We're not in it for the money, really. I mean, it's paying our bills, but we're in it for the feeling of what we're doing. We like to make beer, and we like people to enjoy it, and we like people to get together and relax instead of all the stressful lifestyle.
Grants Pass, an hour from Roseburg, is perhaps best known for the Rogue River recreation area and some of the best fishing in the West. But it's the Wild River Brew Pub that caught our attention.
Southern Oregon is unique. Okay, it's more like Northern California in terms of its climate and geography and so forth. And what the Rogue Valley has going for it is terrific scenery, hiking and biking trails, and of course the Rogue and the Illinois River that people raft and fish for steelhead and salmon on. They've been doing it for years. It's just not a populated region. It's a place that's been known to a very, very few people like Zane Grey and Ernest Hemingway and so forth. And Grants Pass, like every other town, people discover things like wine, they discover things like coffee, then they discover things like microbrewed beer, and they say, this is a worthwhile addition to my life. It's something I want. On a Saturday night, what's going to happen is in about a half hour, the parking lot's going to fill up, people are going to come through the door, and the wood-fired ovens are just going to start cranking out pizzas, calzones, the kitchen's going to start cranking out pastas, and it's just going to get very, very lively. The neat thing about it is, though, it's not a drinking scene, never has been. It's people having food with their families. So you can come with the family, mom, dad, grandpa and grandma, the whole bunch. The prices are extremely moderate here. And we've got the added attraction of really good, I think, he said modestly, craft brewed beer. Beer always has been a hearthside beverage. Okay? It's a home brewed product for almost all of humankind's history. Beer inherently is a fresh product. It isn't meant to be bottled, it isn't meant to be shipped, pasteurized, all the things you have to do to make it shelf stable. Okay? Microbrewery beer is that. It's fresh local beer, just like beer was before Prohibition. And we still have a very sort of slanted view of beer. In Germany and Britain, beer, life, beer, life goes on, we drink beer, that's what's done. Here we're sort of saying to ourselves, well, gee, this is nice, but can it last? And I think it's just a return to normalcy. Of course it'll last. We try to brew to established styles. We don't invent styles because the established styles exist because they appeal to people. They've stood the test of time. They're a challenge to brew correctly. So we brew authentic German and British style beers.
Like that.
I think I'm giving people a taste of some classic beer styles without the expense and trouble of actually having to fly to Europe.
Grants Pass also has a brew pub that is simple, small, and a reminder of the 70s, when this area was home to hippie communes and free spirits.
I think pubs are a public house, and I don't know that we do anything differently than other pubs. We encourage art, we encourage music, we offer up fresh handcrafted beers that give a wide variety of flavors and really try to bring out the fresh flavor of the area. We also make fresh-made soups, fresh-made sandwiches. We bake our own bread. A very open venue, offering up a family environment that people can share with their children, responsible behavior, and enjoy a variety of foods and music. And we have toys for the kids to play with, books for them to read. We cater to anyone that comes in. We don't have a certain clientele that we favor more than any other. So it's been really a blessing in having such a good cross-section of the community. We've had a really good variety of musicians that have come in. We've had bagpipe players from Scotland that have been visiting the area. We've just had a good variety of artists that have come in and shared both music and a variety of artistic talents, tie-dyes and paintings and music. So it's a pretty diverse crowd and diverse setting. We will continue to grow at our pace. We have sites set for expansion. We have equipment already purchased for larger brew system. It'll take a while because of our meager beginnings, but sure, we always hope for awareness and appreciation to grow throughout the entire community. So there's nothing that is really expected. The unexpected can be expected here.
At the end of the valley is Ashland, home of the world-famous Shakespeare Festival, and a wonderful place to spend a sunny afternoon on the riverbank, sipping a craft brew from Rogue Ale's Public House.
It offers a wide range of different activities: biking, hiking, rafting, skiing, culture as far as the plays are concerned, and the Rogue Brewery in Ashland. It's a very diverse, fun place to go to. We offer a wide variety of different micros, all the way from a light ale to a very hearty stout, a barley wine. We have a nice setting as far as the creek side, the deck. We have the Shakespeare Festival here in town. Overall, it's just a nice setting, you know. And I find that most of the people that come here, they're not coming here to try to get drunk or anything like that. They're coming here to socialize, taste different brews, and maybe get an idea of what they might be able to incorporate into their own home brews. I don't know if they're connoisseurs so much as they are brew enthusiasts. And I think what they like is a variety, and they like the idea of stopping in and tasting the different brews. A lot of people like the Mo Ale. It's a wheat style beer. It's a Weizen. It's got a touch of ginger and coriander with Saaz hops. It's about 50% wheat. The oatmeal stout is real popular. It's a Shakespeare stout. Porter is one of my personal favorites. Mexicali Rogue, which is it's a beer spiced with the chipotle. It's a smoked jalapeno pepper. Roganberry, which is a real popular one, especially during the summer months. It's a nice, refreshing ale with a hint of loganberry and raspberry. It was a bit of a slow start, maybe. People weren't quite sure what microbreweries were, and I think it was our job to educate them.
They usually love it. They usually stay for a while, and they come in here and have kind of, well, what's this all microbrew stuff all about? And by the time they're leaving, if I'm helping them, they leave with a smile.
People they're becoming more and more aware of what there is available to them as far as quality. whether it be clothing, cars, or beer, or restaurants. They're looking for something. They're looking for more quality for the dollar, and I feel that microbreweries offer that.
The valley between the Cascade Mountains and the Coast Range may be the population center of Oregon, but it's not the only place to find fantastic brew pubs. To the west of the Coast Mountains are the Oregon beaches, and just 2 hours southwest of Portland lies Newport, an old fishing village on Yaquina Bay, home of Rogue Ale's Public House and the annual Newport Brew Fest.
I really think that Oregon's the land of hops and barley, and if you look at, you could say, well, why is California the mecca for wines? California is the mecca for wines, because the grapes are grown there. And what's the equivalent of grapes in beer? There's 3 ingredients. It's water, it's hops, and barley. And there are only 3 states, I think, in the nation that have the quality of water of Oregon and grow hops and barley. So it's logical that it started here. I think also that there's always been a number of home brewers who provided the brewers for an industry that has grown like this. You just don't invent brewers. You can't educate brewers. You have to create them. And they were already here. They were home brewing in their basements and in their bathtubs and in their sinks.
The process is identical. Home brewers make beer almost the same way that professional brewers make it. The quantity is a little different, but the ingredients are the same and the attitude's the same.
Home brewers are the real innovators. Mixing new ingredients and new styles. They're more willing to take a chance because it's not a commercial risk. Of course, many of the microbrewers come from the ranks of home brewers before. They're skilled at their craft. They're appreciative of the product.
Somebody that would choose a bud over a microbrewery doesn't want to get laid. And I think what you'll find is that the public consumption of most products is about dating. And it used to be that you got more than your fair opportunity at dating if you had a lemon in a Corona bottle. And that's moved to where if you're drinking a martini, you're a drunk, and if you're drinking wine, you're a snob, and if you have something that's dark in color, you're a date.
Oh, beer is part of the good life. There's no doubt. Good beer in moderation, I think that's synonymous, with good life.
It is cool to have a lemon and a Hefeweizen. I don't think it's a lemon, I think it's a Hefeweizen. If you threw the lemon out, you'd still get laid.
The east side of the Cascade Mountains features the sunny high desert country, where you can snow ski, swim, golf, or whitewater raft down the Deschutes, all within minutes of Bend. We visited the Deschutes Brewery and Public House to find the secret of quality brewing.
Oh, there's no question about it. There's no place where the beer tastes better than at the brewery itself. Now, when you combine that with the warm, comfortable atmosphere that a pub really generates, that's, in my opinion, that's the best place to consume that brewery's beer.
We come because my daughter and her friend can come with me, and I can have a beer and they can have something to eat.
Our draft beers are all unfiltered. Filtration's wonderful from a cosmetic standpoint. It does a certain amount to biologically stabilize the beer, but if the beer starts out clean, all a filter does is remove some of the body, some of the flavor, a lot of the vitamins, a lot of the soluble proteins that are inherent in beer that make beer actually a good food. This beer here, the main difference between it and, say, one of the large national breweries is not just the flavor, but the fact that it fills you up. It makes you full. You don't want to drink 5 or 6 of these things. A couple of them is generally plenty for the average person who comes in here, and I think that's something that is difficult to accept for the major breweries that have large volumes to move. The one we sell the most of is Black Butte Porter. It's a dark beer. We've chosen to focus on that one. It's not quite as heavy as a stout, but still a dark beer. Very approachable for the craft beer novice. but yet very complex with depths of flavor that appeal to the seasoned veteran, I'll say. Bachelor Bitter is a copper-colored British-style best bitter, which has a large hop profile that comes from traditional Kent Golding hops. Our lightest beer that we make on a regular basis, this one is the Cascade Golden Ale. It's one we've just recently begun to focus on, having been primarily a dark beer brewery, but one that started out kind of as a transition beer for the drinker making a transition from the national brands to craft beers. And although that is true, it also appeals to, once again, that seasoned veteran who's really looking for something a little bit lighter, a little bit more refreshing. Maybe it's a hot day and they want that nice crisp hop finish.
They have a better taste. You can get more variety, like you can get raspberries in your beer, and it's not just your typical light beer where you try to drink it as much as you can. I enjoy it.
You offer a product that, without any real marketing, a product that just simply has integrity, people will buy it. And that's an extremely rewarding feeling.
"90 minutes east of Portland, you'll discover Government Camp near the summit of Mount Hood, the winter resort that features year-round snow skiing, great summer fishing, and the Mount Hood Brewing Company.
The reason the beer is so good here, our beer is known for its clean taste, is we have incredible water. Even better than the water other places in Oregon. Oregon's known for good water, but here on the mountain we're using water from a private well that taps into a glacial source. It pumps out of the ground, enormous volume at 38 degrees all year round. So it's the best, just about the best beer making water a brewer could hope for. When we opened and planned the decor for the restaurant, we knew that most every other restaurant up here already had a ski motif, so we decided to be a little different and go with a fishing motif. We're on the way from Portland to some of the best fishing in the Northwest. The Deschutes River is just east of here, and the high mountain lakes. So if you look around, you'll see photos of fish that have been caught very nearby, and of course our giant mahogany wood carving of a Steelhead stream above the bar. Folks that are passing through Oregon that have never had microbrewed beers are in for a treat. It's like trying fresh baked bread for the first time, and if you've grown up on store bread, it's that much of a difference. The range of beers available too can be intimidating, but that range in Oregon in particular encompasses very light ales and pilsners all the way up through very heavy porters and stouts and everything in between. Surprisingly, the darker beers are not always the stronger beers, and sometimes you'll find an amber ale that may be a bit intimidating at first or seem intimidating at first, and actually is quite light and refreshing and crisp. Dark doesn't mean strong with microbrewed beers. It generally means richer flavor, although there are some very strong and very rich pale ales too. Our Isaac's India Pale Ale is a good example of that. The color leads people to believe it's going to be very light, but it's actually quite strong. Most microbrew pubs have beer engines or hand pumps on their bars now, and we transfer a small amount of our beer out of fermenters and into kegs to condition, which is a pretty labor-intensive procedure, but it really makes a difference in flavor that a lot of people who really appreciate microbrewed beers seek out.
Microbrews are fresh. They're just a different taste. It's very, very enjoyable, very soothing kind of taste. Really alive compared to the beers you might drink that come from a can, and they're just kind of flat and very ordinary.
I really like the fact that in Oregon it's getting to where almost every small town has a brewery. I think nothing could be better, and in a town, even the smallest government camp, there's room for two.
Down the mountain in the national scenic area of the Columbia Gorge, you'll find some of the best windsurfing in the United States and the home of Full Sail in Hood River, a 1-hour drive from Portland.
The most often asked question is, the people who started the company, everyone is sure we're board sailors. And we moved here to be able to brew beer and go sailing. Sorry, pure myth. We are in the center of the raw ingredients. We're just basically perfectly situated between the malt and the hop growers. There's very good base water here that doesn't require alteration for brewing. This year we're crossing over into the big leagues, the plus 60,000 barrels. It is different. The company now has 50 employees. I have to struggle to know everyone's name. I didn't have to used to do that. I used to know all their wives and their children's names. Well, now it's a challenge just to know all their names. The quality control is much more challenging when you make this amount of beer. We used to be able to practically taste all the beer we made. I mean, literally. We don't do cans, we do bottles and kegs, and there is a difference in taste. I like to use the analogy that bottled beer is to keg beer what 2% milk is to whole milk. So the main difference is there's a slight difference in body more than in flavor. The bottled beer has a lighter overall body in your mouth compared to the draft beer. It's a complex beverage, but I don't think it brings quite the same level of complexity as wine, and therefore it's less, it doesn't put people off. It's more friendly, it's easier, it's more accessible. When the beer shows up in your glass, it should have about 3/4 of an inch of foam sitting on top of it, and that foam should be very stable. It should hold kind of like almost at the texture of almost a mousse. It should sit there. It shouldn't go away. If it goes away in less than a minute, it means the glass that you got it in was not clean. I don't know, people get very passionate about Full Sail Amber Ale. It's a serious beer drinker's beer. And if you can, even if you're a beginner, if you like Full Sail Amber, you're really not a beginner. You may think of yourself as a beginner, but if you can penetrate this beer, you are an advanced beginner. Right now, American craft brewing we're inventing things that had not yet been invented and bringing back styles that are centuries old and have been under wraps and have gone into obsolescence. So there's magic here. The Europeans are coming to visit us now to look at what we're doing. We're the innovators. The outdoor beer garden is one of the places in Hood River to have a beer on a beautiful summer day. When the season is on and the board sailors are here, there are many days when you can't get a seat in this place. We're very much, at this point, a summer destination, not a winter destination. We call this the Fun and Games division of the Full Sail Brewing Company. I think the big brewers don't get enough credit for the quality of the work they do. In our industry, it's very fashionable to speak poorly or ill of them, the national brewers. They have the technology and the science and the art to make every beer we make. They choose not to make it.
Just 20 minutes from Portland, you'll discover the Disneyland of brew pubs. Mike and Brian McMenamins' ultimate everything, Edgefield Manor in Troutdale. We looked back on Edgefield's rich history.
Edgefield goes way back as the county poor farm, and the property was gifted to the county, and it was set up as a 365-acre self-sufficient farm. The property sat vacant for roughly 10 years. What to do with this, fabulous property, just kind of, no one really had an answer. I know Mike had his eye on the buildings just because they're so magnificent. and looked into it over a number of years with the idea of restoration of the buildings and then utilizing it as a hub for what the McMiniman family of pubs and breweries stands for, which is a place for family and friends to come and relax and enjoy. When you drive in, you immediately see the administrator's house, which is bed and breakfast style lodging right now. It's very comfortable, homey feeling. Right past that, you find the herb garden, which is a magnificent display of not only culinary but practical herbs. We have a lot of the ancient brew plants planted out that were used as preservatives before hops. Of course, the large building, the manor as we call it, is a 105-room lodge where people can spend the night. That houses the Black Rabbit restaurant and bar, which is a nice alternative to the pub-style food. Very creative uses of local ingredients and flavors. A wide variety of spirits available in the bar, a lot of single malt scotches. Behind that's the outdoor court area, which in the summertime we call the loading dock food court, and we set up a separate food service area, very casual, outdoors. The Power Station Pub and Theater, first open to the public venue we had out here, and a McMiniman pub, which serves pub fare plus a large variety of beers, all the Edgefield beers that are specific to the Edgefield property, plus a few beers that are brought in from some of the smaller McMiniman breweries and a few selections from other microbrewers. We have Cochrane Glassworks, which is a full display glass blowing operation where you can watch as the artisans blow glass. At first, it's a little contrary to the movie-going idea of sitting in a quiet, dark theater to watch a movie, but with a little experience, you get the feel for it. It's more like a living room feeling where the beer and food is available to take to your table in a real relaxed setting, enjoy a movie, and be with friends. The paintings are a real interesting take. Some of it is just pure whimsical, just a fantasy. And a lot of it, if you look real close, ties in a lot of the historic details of the property. I met Mike out here the first day that I worked in the property, and it was still all just vacant and boarded up. And I met him with Lyle Hain and Joe Cotter, two of the painters, and we were standing out in the asphalt parking lot, staring around at the boarded up buildings, trying to decide really where to start. And out of the tall grass hopped a black rabbit and hopped right up to our feet, checked us all out, and then hopped into the old delousing shed, which is now the Black Rabbit House, and has maintained a presence ever since we've been out here. The microbrewery industry started Edgefield. It laid the groundwork for what we're doing here through what Mike and Brian McMiniman have done with their brew pubs. That Edgefield wouldn't be here without that, and I think you'll see more of that over the next 10 years, where people take the craftsmanship of brewing and incorporate that not only with just the brewery and the brewery tour, but with other facilities that they can tie into that. I think the spirit comes from the ability, whoever you are when you come here, you can create it for yourself. I think that's the true spirit of Edgefield. Is, you know, it can come out of you. We've laid the groundwork, put a few signs up, opened a few doors, and you can kind of make it what you want. There's no rules. You pretty much wander around and interpret it for yourself.
We're back in Portland, to sample the brewing process at Hair of the Dog Brewing Company. Today they're making the famous Adam beer, recently voted Domestic Beer of the Year by Malt Advocate magazine.
We start real early in the morning and we grind the grains in the grain mill. Then we move them from the grain mill over to the mash tun, and we infuse hot water with the crushed grain, and that creates some enzyme activity and gives you sweet wort. What we're trying to do is extract the sugar out of the grain. And once you get the sugar water, or wort as it's known, into the kettle, you do 3 additions of hops. Hops add bittering elements and aromatic elements as well. The earlier you add them, if you let them boil for about an hour, that's going to give you more of a bitter effect. And if you add them in the last 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to get an aromatic effect out of them. So this is another kind of medium to bittering hop that we'll get. That's what the bitter taste is in a beer when you drink it later on. This is a 150-gallon kettle that originally came out of Campbell's Soup in Chicago, Illinois. We're just keeping an eye on the kettle, kind of moving some hops out of the way a little bit. This beer has less hops than our other beer, so it's not nearly as much of a problem or a hassle to get it out. And in about 5-10 minutes, we'll break it out and knock it through the hop back and into the whirlpool. The hop back is so that it'll help impart some aromatic hops in there. It also helps as a strainer that kind of go between the kettle and the whirlpool. The idea of the kettle is to boil the beer and to actually finish it as far as making the beer goes. It's all done in the kettle. And after you bring it out of the kettle, it goes into the hop back, and from the hop back it goes into this whirlpool. And the whirlpool is where the hops are collected. It spins around and forms a cone, and once the cone's formed in the middle, then we pull the liquid from the very outside where the bright, clear wort is, and then we push that through the heat exchanger. So we'll take a gravity reading by grabbing some out of the kettle with our copper ladle. So what the idea is, we have hot wort, it's about 210 degrees, and we need to cool it down to about 60. So that's what this device is right here. It's going to help cool the wort down by throwing the hot copper with cold water circulating through it. It's going to cool it down pretty quick. We'll be able to tell what the gravity of this guy is. What we're seeing is about 1074 specific gravity, and we're shooting for about 1072, so all we'll do is thin it out with just a little bit of water to get it just right, but it's sitting right around 1074 right now. And the difference between 1074 and where the beer finishes tells you how much alcohol potential there actually is in this. And it should go from 1072, 1074 all the way down to about 1015, 1018, and that'll give us about 6% alcohol by weight. It should take about 10 or 15 minutes to go from kettle to hop back to whirlpool. See the steam rising out of the top of the whirlpool, you know it's doing a good, nice whirl effect inside there. And we send it through the chiller or the heat exchanger. The heat exchanger cools it down from about 180 or 190 down to 60, 70 degrees. After it's that cool, it goes into the primary fermenter where we pitch the yeast. Here comes some fluid. There it is, right there. There's product. And yeah. Want to turn it off? You got it. I got it. Okay. After the yeast pitch, it takes about 4 or 5 days for it to ferment in the primary. Then we move it to a secondary for about another week, and then a tertiary for about a couple weeks. And then after we finish bottling it, we actually let it sit in the bottle for a couple weeks to finish blending and get some bubbles up in it. And after that, we label it and foil cap it, and that's what you get.
What was that? Bigfoot? The mysterious creature that roams the Northwest in search of better brew? I can't believe it. Do you believe in Bigfoot?
Do I believe in Bigfoot? Yeah, I do. There's a great number of people here who believe that Bigfoot is out there somewhere.
Do I believe in Bigfoot? Absolutely. Bigfoot is among us today?
I don't know. My boys have big feet.
No. No. It's kind of a romantic notion, but I tend to be more Teutonic in my mentality.
Just the other day I saw somebody driving a car around with a sign on the back of it that said, please report all Bigfoot sightings to such and such number.
Have I seen them? No, but I believe in a lot of things I don't see. So I definitely believe in Bigfoot.
Come to Oregon for fresh brew, fine food, beautiful country, and the possibility of meeting up with some legendary creatures. Oregon. Things look and taste different here.